Today we're going to tie a black woolly bugger, and for that we'll use a streamer hook. And one of the things that I like to do before tying any of my flies is take a pair of pliers or a pair of hemostats and pinch down the barb of the hook. And I like to do that for multiple reasons. First of all, if we're going to release the fish, it makes it faster for us to get the fish unhooked and back into the water. Another reason is that there's certain streams or lakes that we're fishing that require us to use barbless hooks. And the final reason is that if we accidentally hook ourselves or a shirt, jacket, hat, then it makes it much easier to back the fly back out without doing damage. So when we put the hook in the vise, we want to have the shank of the hook essentially parallel to the top of the table. And then we'll take our thread and we'll go ahead and put a few spiral wraps towards the eye of the hook, and then we'll come back over the top of that with additional spiral wraps, and that's called a jam knot. And without actually tying a physical knot, then we've got the thread attached to the hook shank, and then we can cut off the excess thread that's called the tag end. And what I like to do is work with about this much length of thread, and then we'll put a base down on the length of the shank of the hook. And so the shank of the hook stops right about here where the bend starts. And then we'll go ahead and put wraps up towards the eye of the hook. And you see, by working with that shorter amount of thread, I can just pivot my wrist and go ahead and control the placement of where the thread is without having to go through large arm movements and stuff that will wear us out over the course of the day. Now, the woolly bugger typically is fished as a sinking weighted fly, and so we're going to add weight by using some lead-free wire. And we'll grasp the end, and we'll just make depending upon the depth of the water that you're fishing, I like to use somewhere between 6 and 12 wraps of thread and or of the wire, and that will control the sink rate. And then when we've got that wrapped on, we can pinch the wire and then come back and wiggle, and it will break right at that pinch point so that we don't have to use our scissors. And then take the tag end of that wire and go ahead and wrap that backwards so that we've got a nice uniform set of wraps, and then pinch them together. And then we'll bring the thread and wrap that forward up over that, turn around and come back a few times. And what that will do is it creates a bump of thread in front of and behind the wire so that it doesn't shift as we tie the rest of the fly. So now that we've got the thread back here to the back of the hook shank, or our tie-in point, we're going to take a feather, and this is a marabou feather, and we want to stroke some of the barbs down so that we can get rid of the excess material. And so then we take the scissors and we just cut the stem at that point. And now we've got the piece that's going to become the tail of the fly. And so we'll then grasp this in our hand and we'll measure that against the hook shank. And what we want is for this to be about the same length as from this point to this point. And so you can see this is a little bit long. So what I can do is grasp the end of this and just pull it to the point that it's measured to be the right length. Then I'll transfer that to my other hand and then bring that right to this point, and I pull the thread up between my finger and thumb, make a loop, and then pull it straight down. And then I'll make a few more wraps that way, and that locks the marabou right on the top of the hook shank so that it hasn't twisted around to the side. And then what I like to do is wrap it forward right up behind the lead wire so that it's creating a little bit of an underbody and everything is a nice smooth transition. And then we'll lock those down, bring the thread back to our tie-in point, and then we'll take the saddle hackle, which is basically this longer black feather. We'll grasp it by the tip, stroke the barbs back, and then we're going to create a place that when we set that on the top of the hook shank, we're just tying down the tip of that feather. And then we'll bring that back to that same tie-in point, and we'll take a piece of chenille, which is basically little pieces of short thread that are twisted between two threads. And if we grip the end of that and pull, we can pull some of those little thread fuzz pieces out, exposing the two threads that were involved. And then we want to tie those threads on top of the hook shank so that we get this added without adding to the bulk. And then we'll spiral wrap the thread forward to where we're going to finish the fly. And then what we're going to do is wrap the chenille, and I like to lift the saddle hackle up and make one wrap behind the saddle hackle before I go forward. And part of that is that it will help protect the stem of that feather so that any toothy fish that bites it doesn't have his teeth cutting through the saddle hackle, which would cause the fly to partially unravel and stuff. So that it's just to protect it. When we came to the front, you saw I put 3 wraps of thread over the chenille to prevent that from unwrapping. Those are called locking wraps. And now that we're done with that, we can cut off the extra chenille. And then we'll pull a little bit of that fuzz out, wrap that down just so that it's well tied. And then we'll bring the saddle hackle, and what we're going to do is spiral wrap that forward, trying to get the saddle hackle to go right between the wraps of the chenille that we used to create the body. And if you wiggle that just a little bit as it's going forward, usually those will seat right between the individual wraps. And you see how that this wrapping of the feather forward causes the barbs of the feather to flare, which will give us materials that will create movement as the fly goes through the water, giving an illusion of life. And I'm going to back this up just a little bit because we're getting to the end of the feather and it's starting to get webby. And so I'm taking one of those twists out and coming forward and doing this so that I get up here and will tie off the feather at this point. Again, using the 3 locking wraps. And then we'll cut the stem of the feather there. And then I'm going to stroke the barbs back. And once I've done that, then I'm going to use the thread to make a little head on this. And because there's a couple of errant barbs in there, I'm going to give it a little bit of a haircut at this point. And then we'll create that ball of thread for the head. And then I like to use a double hitch to create the knot. Some people prefer a whip finish, others will use a series of half hitches, and that is up to the individual tire. But for this double hitch, I pull a length of thread out, I put my finger on it, I make a loop and do 1.5 wraps around that, and we'll bring half of the loop above the eye of the hook and half below. And if I put 3 of those on the fly, this fly will not unravel. And some people at this point like to put a little bit of head cement on the fly to glue the thread wraps together. With the thread that we're using being the uni thread, I have not found it necessary to use head cement, but if you are interested, head cement does lock the thread wraps together and make the fly a little bit more durable. But that completes our black woolly booger. We can also tie this fly using olive. Some people like brown and orange combinations to imitate crayfish, and you can mix and match colors as well. But it's a very, very effective fly. The black and olive are very popular with both trout, smallmouth, northern pike, and bass. So I think you'll enjoy tying this fly. So thank you.